I'm Dale Tanhart, and the NASCAR Cup Series race at Bristol on Saturday night was a pure disgrace to racing and a pure disgrace to Bristol for what we've known it for a very, very long time. And I wanted to wait a little bit, especially because Kyle Larson dropped some thoughts, kind of going at the fan base, defending the sport as he should. But I just cannot stand by what we saw on Saturday night, regardless of what some drivers in industry are saying. So I'm going to give a breakdown in a few different parts here about what we saw on Saturday night. Can we fix it? How can we fix it? And why NASCAR's current mindset is extremely toxic to some of NASCAR's most legendary racetracks. First point I want to talk about here is tires. The disappointment of being led to believe we would see some sort of tire fall off like we saw at Bristol in the spring definitely assists in this being a major letdown, because we had that race and we had an additional tire test that led everybody in the industry to believe we would see something similar. And instead, on Saturday night, we saw the exact opposite. If there is a book, a dictionary definition of tire fall off, we saw and discovered the exact fucking opposite on Saturday night. No fall off at all whatsoever, which is not crazy for Bristol, but something we really need with this race car right now. It was embarrassing, and not because Kyle Larson led the most laps. I had money on Kyle Larson. I was very happy. You can check out my picks. But at the end of the day, the racing was a massive conveyor belt. You're having guys in 23rd place run almost the same exact lap time as people in the top 10 and in the top 5, and you can't pass. It's not all Goodyear's fault. Yes, it's partially Goodyear's fault, and I've been raised as a lifelong NASCAR fan to hate Goodyear. Shout out to Tony Stewart for spreading the gospel over the years. But at the end of the day, it's not fair to Goodyear because while they're not great, they're not the best, I think they have made progress. They're actually receiving some praise from drivers, which is something I'd never remember growing up from a lot of the stars of the sport. But at the end of the day, the reliance on Goodyear by NASCAR to create something that can save the sport at these short tracks is a very, very damning idea. And just in general, I mean, if you've watched NASCAR over the past 20 years, you know damn well the one thing Goodyear has been great at is being inconsistent and giving us the blimp. That might be the best thing Goodyear's given us, with all due respect. According to important people in the industry that I trust, Goodyear is doing a better job, and I'm excited to see the option tire at Martinsville coming up that could help short track racing as a whole in the Gen 7 era. Rocky, come lay down. Rocky, come lay down. Get over here. Next point I want to talk about is Bristol. Let's just talk about the racetrack. I went back and watched every Bristol night race between 2011 and 2014 when top lane Bristol became very dominant. And I remember enjoying those races when I was a teenager, and I actually went to the Bristol night race in 2014 because me and my dad loved what we had seen at Bristol in prior years. So I don't think this is a top or bottom lane Bristol argument. The track has been great, whether it's bottom lane dominant or top lane dominant over the years. And if you go back and look at those races, even go back to 2020 or 2021 where we had good races in the night race, the biggest difference is power. And this is a dead horse I hate to beat because everybody beats it, and NASCAR is definitely in a no matter what type of mindset on never giving us horsepower ever again in the Cup Series. And it's just baffling. Where's our manufacturer? Nope, doesn't fucking exist. That's why the biggest difference isn't the tire fall off in particular, it's power. And the more power you have enables the possibility of sliding around, which consequently creates some additional tire fall off. Like Goodyear can get away 8-10 years ago, even 5 years ago, bringing a very neutral tire and not being an issue because the way that the cars handle with more horsepower, the fall off is good enough to produce better racing, better passing. You have drivers making actual mistakes. Chris Gabehart said in this interview with Matt Weaver, cars are too easy to drive. How many times have we heard that? You go back to 900 horsepower, you won't have anybody saying that. So when we talk about all these issues, Bristol is not the issue. I don't care about progressive banking. I don't care about top lane dominance. We have had classic, legendary moments in bottom lane Bristol and top lane Bristol over the past 25 years. This is the one track, out of any track on the schedule, this is the one that has been consistently glorified for chaos, calamity, crashes, legendary moments. I mean, This is the one track we go to that all the fans can agree. If we get a crash fest, it's going to be fun. Nobody thinks that way anymore about Daytona, Talladega, other short tracks. We can always appreciate a crash fest at Bristol, which is what we used to get, whether it was bottom lane Bristol or top lane Bristol. And it was because we had more horsepower, drivers on edge, making mistakes, and we just don't have that right now. And that leads me to my final point here. We got to talk about the car. NASCAR's mindset could kill Bristol. It could kill Martinsville. It could kill Daytona and Talladega. This isn't just relative to short tracks. This is relative to those 4 tracks I just listed, because the mindset is we're not doing anything to the car. We're pinning all the pressure and all the blame elsewhere. And when we talk about Bristol and the short tracks, it's all on Goodyear. It's like if your boss just walked up to you. It's like the fucking Lumberg from Office Space. It's like if he just walked up to you, set 8,000 files on your desk and said, get to work. He walks back in his office, smokes a cigar, props his feet up on his fucking desk. That's how I visualize this situation. Once again, I've been raised to be hard on Goodyear, but I think they have improved. I trust Denny Hamlin. I trust these guys that are defending Goodyear to some degree. Most of the blame has to go to NASCAR for completely deflecting the situation. The situation, in factuality, is that this car is just flawed. It is a very, very flawed race car. We can get away with it on the mile and a half. Hell, we can get away with it at Atlanta, some of the road courses. We've had some legendary races, some classic moments, some phenomenal, genuine racing at some of these other tracks. But with the current state of this race car, we're at risk of losing Bristol, Daytona, Talladega, and Martinsville. And keep Talladega in mind because it's coming up in a couple weeks. Talladega is not special anymore if you can't competitively race 3 wide. Talladega will die if you have nothing unique about it. I mean, you go back and watch races from the early 2000s and the teens, even 5 years ago. Phenomenal 3 wide, even 4 wide racing at times. That does not exist anymore because of the deficiencies with the race car. Now, I don't know how to fix Daytona and Talladega, but when it comes to the short tracks, it seems like more horsepower would be the ultimate fix. And not a perfect fix, but something that would make the racing better. Like we dealt with dirty air 8, 10, 12 years ago in these Bristol races I just told you to go back and watch. And more horsepower can mitigate that problem. I just think that is physics, straight physics. It will make it better and it will create variance in speeds. When we look at Bristol, when we look at Martinsville, when we look at these short tracks, we'll need it at Richmond, we'll need it at Bowman Gray, etc. It's just crazy to me when we talk about Bristol, and I talked a little bit about Dega. NASCAR's most legendary fun tracks that have exemplified pure entertainment over the course of NASCAR's virtually their entire history are killed by this race car and NASCAR's lack of accountability. And I don't know what's going to change their mindset. It seems like they're more willing to let these tracks die than to actually just take accountability and not ignore what everybody knows is evident. That's my biggest frustration here, because NASCAR, I think in the past 4 or 5 years, has done an excellent job with some business decisions. I think they've been very aggressive with the schedule. I think they've done a great job in their social media presence. I think all in all, ownership is better right now than it was in the Brian France era, especially in the later years and in the fall-off years. But for the life of me, this just blows my mind. If we're going to keep crutching this manufacturer talk, where the fuck is it? Have we've been waiting for 6 fucking years? Can we just admit that we're wrong? Say these legendary tracks by just saying, look, we were not right about this. Let's make it right. I just don't understand the thought process, and I wish more people would hold them accountable to this concept. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you have a solution better than anything I said or an opinion that differs, let me know. We just need more accountability up top with the Gen 7 race car, period.